So how exactly do you go about explaining what the NAR settlement is to your clients that leaves you looking like the expert in the room? Handling this upfront and discussing it with your clients will get ahead of that chance that they're going and talking to friends or family and getting misinformation elsewhere. And how long you spend on the subject is going to depend on who you're talking to. You might find that you get very little pushback from certain clients that just understand that our services have a fee associated with it. And then you're going to have clients that ask a ton of questions who have been seeing the information online and drawing their own conclusions without being educated first. And you might want to spend more time going through that and assessing those objections in your buyer strategy session.
That's right. And what we found as we've done this in the field with our clients is the vast majority of people are good with the 30-second explanation. That way they understand, they've got some context for what they've heard in the headlines, and they're not fearful. The biggest thing that we need to be mindful of is that fear can often prevent people from acting or cause them to act in a way that isn't consistent with what we want at the end of the day. What we want is buyers and sellers who are confident transacting in real estate. And we get that by being honest and transparent and explaining the situation clearly up front.
So when is the time to go over all of this information about the NAR settlement and also just the general steps to a transaction? You have your listing presentation, which we all should be doing, but are you doing a buyer strategy meeting? At Reinvest, we have a template for you to incorporate the value that you bring into a transaction and what you're doing differently in your business. And it also details out the steps to the transaction, so this is a repeatable, easy to remember process, and your clients can walk away having that information, which is going to set you apart from the other agents in your industry.
It's so important to have these tools at your buyer strategy session and your listing presentation. At some point in your career, you'll get so busy that you have too many deals going on and you don't even know what you did. When you have a systematic, repeatable process, you'll know that all your clients have been educated properly, that you've set expectations, that they know what's going to happen in the real estate transaction, and you have a much higher chance of your deal staying together.
And when you're educating at a higher level, you would be surprised at the number of times I sit down with a client who's bought and sold 5 to 10 times, and I'm still bringing new information to them with this packet and information.
That's right. And I've also been on listing appointments as a seasoned agent with 5+ years of experience, and I haven't followed my own process, and I've lost out on listings as a result. This is important stuff. We're going to break down what to do on the buyer side and the seller side for you right now, and we'll provide those templates to you so you can customize them and bring your own value prop.
In the absence of value, price is the only lever. You do not want to be a commodity. If you're bringing top-tier value to a transaction, you should confidently be able to ask for top-tier compensation. Why do people choose to buy luxury goods? Why do they choose Mercedes and BMW over a Toyota, who will get them there just the same?
That's right. They're both cars, but those brands have built perceived value in the eyes of their clients. You're doing the exact same thing on the buying or selling side as an agent. One of the most difficult things that you'll face in a buyer strategy session is the topic of compensation. Let's continue with that car analogy for just a second. The price of compensation for a salesperson has always been baked into every good. When you think about buying a car, the compensation for that salesperson is just part of the sticker price. Why is a real estate transaction any different from that? It shouldn't be.
In this day and age, information is readily available to our clients, and they think they know it all. And what we need to do is educate them on all of the behind-the-scenes information that they don't actually know when they have access to Zillow and Realtor.com.
That's right. There's something like 150 steps in the real estate sales transaction, and those are just the ones that are on paper. It doesn't include being a therapist and some of the other jobs that we take on at times. Our buyer guide gives you everything you need to communicate what a buyer's agent's job is and what you specifically do.
One of the hardest parts about being a business owner is discussing what you're worth. I've been a business owner since I was 11 years old, and I've gone through the learning curve of figuring out how best to explain what I bring to a situation. And that starts with confidently stating my value. Secondly, actually having the value to bring. And third is building that trust enough where that client decides to work with me.
The next video is dedicated entirely to helping you nail the buyer strategy meeting. In this video, we want to stick to objections that you'll get. One of the most challenging things is going from that to talking about compensation, which we want to help you with right now. Compensation has changed. It's likely that sellers are still going to offer compensation to buyer's agents, but just in a different fashion. Sellers may offer a credit towards a buyer broker's fees, and then that would be disseminated down to the agent as a commission. So as an agent, we may or may not have that information up front. It'll kind of depend on how some MLSs decide to handle the situation. What we do know is that the seller will have had that conversation with their listing agent. So before showing a property or before writing an offer, discuss compensation with the listing agent. See what's being offered and talk to your client and see if there's any delta, any difference there that they would need to bring up at the closing.
Regardless of whether a seller has chosen as a part of their marketing strategy to offer any sort of compensation to a buyer's agent, that doesn't really affect what you've negotiated your fee to be with your client. How I phrase it to my clients is that sometimes a seller may contribute towards this cost, but regardless, this is going to be a cost of your buying process. And that's a statement, not a question.
Now that you have your pre-negotiated compensation with your buyer, you can go out confidently into the world and shop for homes. In that meeting, you'll want to be very clear that some sellers will contribute towards your compensation and some will not. In many cases, you'll be able to roll the expense of buyer compensation into the loan. That's what we're doing now. It's baked into the price. It's likely that that will continue, but it's not a guarantee, and that is subject somewhat to the market conditions. Even if the seller is offering no compensation or partial compensation, you may be able to increase the purchase price slightly to include your fee. You'll have to make sure that the property appraises, and you really probably can't pull that off in a seller's market, so that will vary market to market, and you always want to make sure you check with your broker to ensure that you're complying with local guidelines.
You just don't want to be having this conversation when you come across a property where a seller has no compensation or partial compensation offered. You want to get ahead of this so it doesn't look like you're what's standing between your client and their dream home.